Of part 3 of Common Sense Economics. We are talking about things that we're applying our knowledge of economics now to good government policy in ways that government can sometimes lead to not the best scenarios, and how markets can be better than political allocation. So number 5 is, unless constrained, special interest groups will use democracy to gain favors at the expense of others. So how can interest groups doing that? They're just a small minority, right? How can this minority end up getting policy that they like, even though they're not all, the majority of Americans are hurt by policies that interest groups may like. So how come they're able to get them through? Well, it's really something that we call the special interest effect, right? And there's special interest for all sorts of things, because everyone has their own interests, right? And the idea is that if you can get people with, your special interests to kind of group up, you can kind of support a politician that will be able to get those through. And of course, if you're a politician, what you need is, that 50% plus one, a majority of the votes. So if you can get enough special interest, you'll be able to secure yourself, a seat on wherever you're trying to serve. Yeah. So you got to think, why then does the general populace not say, hey, you're only serving all these individual special interest groups. I like this. You got Arnold. I'm going to say, I will take on all the special interests. And then he looks around and just everything is a special interest, right? So they hire lobbyists, right? These small interest groups will hire lobbyists, just as Darth was saying, to go in to convince these politicians that hey, you need to pass this bill, this sugar quota, because this is going to bring sugar jobs into the United States, and that's awesome and that's good. What they don't tell the politician is, hey, literally every other American is going to be hurt by this. They'll have to pay way more for sugar. Not only that, there's going to be a bunch of companies that use sugar to produce things that are now going to be leaving the country and actually reducing the amount of jobs that we have. So, everyone's heard off. America's made worse off by, these sugar quotas, yet they get passed, right? Why don't the Americans that would have to pay more sugar do anything about it? Well, they're only paying 10 to $15 more a year on average for sugary products. And, well, when the companies leave, it may be hard to trace it back to this, right? The people that just aren't educated on how that can happen, right? We only see the visual effect of, oh my gosh, we have more sugar jobs, right? The jobs that are lost are unseen. The jobs that are prevented from coming into reality, those are unseen, right? The costs are so small, spread across everybody. The costs do end up being more than the benefits. But the idea here is that this special interest group, the sugar companies, they care a whole lot because they're going to get a whole lot more money because of this, because they're able to charge more. Okay, but the majority, we're all unorganized. Yeah, we really don't care. It's only $10 to $15 a year, so we don't really notice it. So because of that, you have people that care a lot are going to get it to go through, and they're going to be able to convince that politician. They're going to be able to prevail, right? Because ultimately, the special interest groups, those are also the ones that are able to mobilize voters to vote for a politician, right? So this is what we call the special interest effect, right? We have a concentrated people with benefits, but a disorganized, dispersed costs on all the other individuals, okay? And I like the word that Darth said, politicians kind of have to court these special interest groups and business people because, they're getting their... Because, if you're a businessman and you don't get what you like from a politician, then you just move on to the next politician, right? So politicians kind of have to make those concessions. It's a good point, Darth. Okay? So the special interest effect eventually results in, all these politicians just serving all the different special interests. We like to think that it's, politicians handing out benefits like this cartoon here, right? The politician is saying, hey, do you want? Can I have access to all these different things? Can I have all these different perks that will be keeping out new entrants? And then you have the Democrats and the Republicans. It's both parties doing it. They're saying, oh yes, please give me the campaign contributions so I can continue to win. Okay, so it's them kind of trading, right? Trading, getting reelected for giving more money and more restrictions for these special interests, right? Because whenever we think regulation, we think it's protecting the consumer, but really regulations, are made oftentimes because these special interests will lobby for keeping out new competition. Yeah. Special interests get politicians elected through campaign donations and getting the workers to vote, right? We already mentioned that. And again, everyone is made worse off, but there's little incentive to act. Yeah, there's little incentive to fight against it because oftentimes you may not even notice it, right? Because we don't know that sugar could be cheaper, because all we know is sugar being more expensive because of the quotas, right? We don't know that in other countries sugar is, half the price of what it is here in the States, and because of that, sugary goods could be less. Okay. Anyways, let's go on. So all politicians, they have to cater to these special interests because that's how you get elected. Yeah. Let's watch this video here. This video is a great example of special interests and what we call earmarking. Okay. Earmarking is where there may be a bill on, I don't know, making sure that the children have clean drinking water, but something else entirely gets added in. Whoa, spooky alien music.
The cost of the war in Iraq has now surpassed $1 trillion. That's more money than our country has spent on any war besides World War II. And that doesn't even include the Pentagon's annual operating budget, which will cost taxpayers an additional $480 billion this year.
Our government is so serious about national defense that they're even protecting us from the alien menace.
It's important that we're protected against aliens, though, right, guys?
$1.6 million in the 2008 defense spending bill is earmarked for SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Since the 1960s, SETI scientists have been listening for evidence of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, with the goal of answering the question, are we alone?
Signs was such a good movie.
Among the most important questions ever answered, because the question is so old.
So, are we?
You have this guy working. It's a very important question we have to answer. So it's very important that we get funding. Dude, again, special interests, they think their worldview is the most important. In the same way, yeah, I'm an economist. I think the questions that I ask are the most important. Does that mean that I should get government money? I guess I do. I am a teacher. I'm going to back off now.
We alone?
Well, there haven't been any confirmed detections made by any of the SETI instruments to date. But if you just take it from a statistical vantage point, given the numbers of stars and the numbers of planets that are certainly out there, I have no doubt that we have company.
SETI is doing some pretty fascinating work. But why are they receiving money from the Defense Department? Are aliens really a threat to our national security?
The alien menace scenario is not something that I lose any sleep over at all. Detecting the signal in no way means that the civilization that sent that has detected us. So I think we're pretty safe.
Since 1993, SETI has been funded almost exclusively by private donations. A few years ago, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen ponied up $25 million to get the Allen Telescope Array project off the ground. And lots of other individuals and corporations have followed suit.
That's so fun.
Also, a lot of these people have bought telescopes. Here, you can buy one for $150,000. And you don't get to keep the telescope, but you do get your name on it.
So why is SETI receiving money that's supposed to be...
So they were getting private dollars, right?
The $1.6 million that SETI received is called an earmark. Earmarks are one way that our elected officials funnel federal tax dollars back to people in their home districts. In this case, the sponsoring representative was Anna Eshoo, the Democratic representative from SETI's district. Republican Tom Coburn of Oklahoma is an outspoken critic of earmarks in the Senate.
Earmarks are the gateway drug for overspending, because earmarks are used to get people to vote for bills they would never otherwise vote for. Probably one of the worst things that...
Like, hey, my district, it may be Republican. Republicans are typically against drug legalization. Let's say there's a drug legalization bill to make it illegal on the federal level. Someone from Indiana may say, well, hey, if we get, X dollars for something in Indiana, right? I don't know, think of an example. We're going to have it so that free wings are distributed to everybody in Indiana for 10 years. Well, then maybe they're like, okay, well, it's worth signing off on that bill to do that because then we get free wings. Okay, something ridiculous like that wouldn't happen, but that's the idea.
That occurs with earmarks is it makes us pigs at a trough to see how much we can get for our state.
The SETI subsidy costs each U.S.
In the state of 2020, yeah, you're absolutely right that no alien would want to touch this planet with a 10-foot pole.
citizen less than a penny a year, and therein lies the problem.
Let's listen to that again, 'cause I interrupted it.
Subsidy costs each.
Probably one of the worst things that occurs with earmarks.
Let's
is
talk
it
about
makes
dispersed
pigs
costs.
at a trough to see how much we can get for our state.
The SETI subsidy costs each U.S. citizen less than a penny a year, and therein lies the problem. None of us has a very strong incentive to speak out against any particular earmark, but the recipients have a very strong incentive to make sure the subsidies keep coming.
I think what it does is it creates an unfair and unbalanced representative government. Is if you've got money and you can influence things in Washington, you get benefit. If you don't have money and you can't influence, you're not necessarily benefited. The real losers, however, are our children and our grandchildren. No family member would spend their grandkids' life savings on a non-essential item so they could look good, yet we do it routinely.
In fact, 520 of the 535 members of Congress received earmarks in 2008, including Robert Byrd.
Well, there's no question Robert Byrd is the biggest earmarker of all time.
Unlike Paul Allen, Robert Byrd didn't have to use his own money to get a telescope named after him in his home state of West Virginia. In 2008, earmarks funded fruit fly research in France.
So, earmarks are the... So you have earmarks and pork barrel spending. Earmarks are the actual use of saying, hey, here's this bill, but a part of this bill is going to be sending this money to a certain area. Even in this case, talk about fruit fly research in France. It doesn't even have to be a state. So earmarks are essentially getting some money to go to a certain area. Where it becomes pork barrel spending is kind of subjective, right? Pork is kind of used as a derogatory term for spending that's not needed, that's added on just for oh, this is just clearly pork, it's being added on so this person will actually accept the bill. You could say that like all earmarks are pork barrel spending. Sorry, all pork barrel spending is earmarking, right? But not all earmarking is pork barrel spending. Okay. Whereas as an economist, of course, I would say that all earmarks are pork barrel spending, but that's it's a little bit biased. So let's go on.
A private aquarium in Chicago and the Charles B. Rangel Center for Public Service.
They're not big dollars to us in Washington. They're very big dollars to individuals.
And when you add up all these earmarks, the numbers get really scary. This year, 11,610 congressional earmarks cost taxpayers over $17 billion.
Having the press highly involved.
That said, though, let's take $17 billion. Okay. Do I even have... There's million. I have to turn my calculator sideways. So 17 billion divided by the 300 million people that live here. And of course, I am understating it, but that's only going to make the example even better. But that's what's 300,000. Hold on. 17 billion divided by the 300 million that live in the States. That's about $60 per person per year. Okay. It'd be less than that because I think there's 323. What, $45 a year per person, right, to get all these things?
And scrutinizing not only just a few of the earmarks, but
well, that's not true. It'd be closer to like 150 million people because not everyone in the States works. Anyways, it's a lot of money per person, right? You could say probably nearing $100 per person a year that are spent on earmarks. I'm assuming earmarks have gotten bigger since when this was recorded.
The connections between earmarks and relationships, connections between earmarks and campaigns, I think is a highly critical need that we've not seen enough of.
If you think SETI is a good idea, you can make a donation at SETI.org. If you think earmarks are a bad idea, you might want to call your own representative and ask some hard questions about earmarks.
I think when the American people get it, they're going to throw this process out.
For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
But Americans will never get it because we don't care, right? I mean, it goes back to what we learned about in a previous lecture. This whole idea of rational ignorance, right? The costs to us are so relatively small for each earmark that we never really notice, and therefore we never really contact our legislators. We never vote against it. It's rational ignorance, right? So democracy will always lead to this, okay? Another thing we have to think about is not just the overspending that occurs from interest groups, but also there's this idea of regulatory capture, where you oftentimes see a revolving door between the individuals in executive agencies that are regulating these companies and people who have high-level positions in these companies, right? Both people going from these companies to sit on the to sit on the boards of these executive agencies that are regulating them, or people going from the executive agencies into those companies. Of course, Ajit Pai is an example of this. I think he worked for Verizon, and now he is the FCC chairman, or sorry, what's that called? Secretary, right? I think it's chairman. Hold on, let's look this up. Yep, chairman. I'm right. My memory is so good. So now you have, this kind of shifts your focus as a regulator, right? You don't go from wanting to make sure that these regulations are actually being attacked, but you're also trying to keep these businesses happy instead of trying to protect the actual interests that your agency is set up to protect, right? So I kind of like this example of these, foxes in a hen house, right? Where the people that are meant to be saving them are also the people that are, doing the fine dining, I suppose. So there's another thing that can happen, and that's log rolling, okay? So not just this idea of regulatory capture, not just this idea of earmarking, right? But also log rolling, which is another way of just saying vote trading. So let's say that there is a hospital in Ashley's district, a library in Rhett's district, and for Scarlett, there's a stadium in Scarlett's district. Okay, now all of these things on their own, they wouldn't pass, because look at the total value across this whole area, right? The total value is negative. The total value is negative. The total value is negative. But Ashley here can get some money just to benefit her district. Rhett can get some money just to benefit his district, and Scarlett can get some money just to benefit her district, right? So they can benefit from this and get things for their district by trading votes with one another, right? Ashley will vote to have the hospital pass, and Scarlett will, of course, because that's her district. Rhett will also do it in exchange for Ashley voting for her bill, for his bill, okay? And Scarlett will also vote yes to it if Ashley votes for Scarlett's bill as well. So if they all trade votes with one another, all these are going to end up getting passed, right? Even though they all end up having a negative value. And you may also notice that, all of these things in general, you may look, Ashley is getting $200, but this $200 ends up costing her, all of these other projects that are being funded, right? So she votes yes to the hospital and votes yes to the hospital, which is hers, votes yes to the library, which is Rhett's, and votes yes to the stadium, which is Scarlett's. I mean, she ends up losing a lot more money, right? So she's voting yes, but that's going to cost her district $40 as well as $270. So they're essentially they're getting $200 for $310 worth of stuff, right? So trading votes actually gets things with a negative value to be approved, right? So that is it for Section 5. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for Section